Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Joyce Bender live with YouTube. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Now I want to tell you, you can always go see me there. And you know what? This show, 21st year, has been successful because of you, all my listeners, in the United States and around the world, and my lead sponsor, Highmark, all these years. So awesome. Enabling me to get out to you news about what's happening in the world of disability. And I must tell you, since you're seeing me on YouTube, that right behind me is the Americans with Disabilities Act. What happened is Evan Kemp was the EEOC commissioner, and he was in a wheelchair, and he was up on the platform with President Bush, South Lawn of the White House, 1990, July 26, when he signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, and Evan used a wheelchair. Well, when Evan passed away, his wife put together a shadow box that includes two index cards with the introduction of what he was going to say, introducing the president, a photo of the signing. And as you can see, one of the pens, you know how the president gives a pen to everyone who's there for a signing of a bill and a copy of the Americans with Disabilities Act and pen that says, you know, ADA signing. Well, this is like my pride and joy. I mean, I got this, guess where? At an auction that Disability Rights Education Defense Fund had, and they were giving things away like back then now, going to California to see friends, things of that nature. I said, I don't want that. I want the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I did get it, and I have it. And it's just means so much to me. And right by it is a photograph of the signing of the Civil Rights Act. It used to be in Mary's office, Mary Brocker. She was actually born on that day, July 2nd, 1964. Isn't that amazing? But see, I keep her here with me because I put it in my office right by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I am over the top about how much Mary contributed to this show. I mean, to this company. She did so much for us and for all of you. And by all of you, hey, to all of my friends around the world, wow. Remember when we just had 17 countries? Now we have 153 countries. What do you think about that, Perry?
Joyce, that's really, I think it's the craving for great information about disability and employment. That's why you have over 100 countries listening to you. Other people want to know how this happens in America, how you're doing it, and it's just terrific.
Yes, because as Perry well knows, even in Asia, when I went to South Korea, Japan, and Indonesia, there is pervasive shame if you have a disability. And it's terrible. So I always say, even if you're that one person in Saudi Arabia that listens to this show, because we get the data, you can make a difference. One person can make a difference. Just all of you go to every venue where they have English speaking uh, communications and tell them about this show. Whether you are in Saudi Arabia or Australia, or wow, Germany has a big listening audience. So thank you so much to all of you. And Richard Roberts in Brazil, how are you? Love you. And Gangyang Cho in South Korea. And by the way, as I'll be telling you in a minute, I'll tell you about our guest and something from South Korea. But Yoshiko, hey, Yoshiko Dart, special shout out to you, Yoshiko. You know how much I love you. You are so awesome, a great leader. Thank you so much. Well, this is the 30th anniversary of Bender Consulting Services. And it is the 35th anniversary this year of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And as we celebrate the year, since this is my 30th anniversary of finding employment for people with disabilities, I talk all the time about how I got started, wouldn't have been possible without Highmark, one man, one decision, saying, yes, Joyce, I'll stand behind you. Never, I know he never dreamt that we would end up finding jobs for thousands of people with disabilities and everything else that has happened. But that company has continued standing behind me all these years. All the people at the top standing behind me, which, just so you know, this is the only company in America that can say that. It would be great, wouldn't it, if I could say, oh, yeah, there are thousands, but no, there aren't. But hey, we're working to change that. And you know what I say about Highmark? Highmark sets the high mark for other companies to follow. And today, oh my goodness, I couldn't have a better guest on my first live show than Deb Rice Johnson, who is the CEO of Diversified Business Services and Chief Growth Officer at Highmark. But my friend, I love her so much. She is beyond amazing. She is just awesome. And I have known her for many years. As a matter of fact, Mary Brocker worked for her. And Deb was also very close to Mary. But I've known Deb all those years. She has been behind me all those years. Remember, I said South Korea? She invited me to dinner one night, and she had framed in glass the Post Gazette, front page story about Joyce Bender in South Korea, which is on my wall here in our office. And that's just one tiny example of all the things she has done for me and you. So, to all of you people with disabilities in all those countries and throughout the United States, remember this: she hires people. She's the real deal. And with that, Deb, it's a pleasure to have you on the show again. As this month we are celebrating Highmark Month. And I am so delighted to have you on again. Our listeners have asked, especially during this month, to know a little more about our guest. So maybe, Deb, if you could start by just sharing a little bit about yourself, um, that would be great.
Well, maybe I will start with, and thank you for having me today, Joyce. This is very exciting. Maybe I'll start with I'm a generous person because I shared Mary Brocker, who was a star employee of mine. I shared her with you and all of the disability community. So just a little, I like that reminder on occasion, Joyce, to make sure you remember that.
That's
Um,
it. Connect the dots.
Connect the
You
dots.
know, God always has a plan
That's
through you, and then the rest of the world.
right. Wow, thank you. Well, what I would start with, first of all, and most importantly, I'm a mom, and I'm a mom of a very blended family. As you know, Joyce, you know my family. I have two bonus daughters and grand kiddos from my late husband. I also have a daughter with him, and it's Alyssa. As you mentioned, she worked twice with you in the past. And her and her husband, Micah, are expecting their first child. So I'm
Yay.
over the top excited. And I have two more bonus children with my current husband. So we truly are a blended family, and it's really very special. I grew up in North Huntington, a little place right outside of Pittsburgh. Been there almost my whole life. Went to school there, Norwin School District. Shout out for Norwin. Um, and have really become engaged in the community for a lot of years. I went to college while I worked for what is now Highmark. I'll talk about that in a little bit. and I'm a first generation college graduate. And so, it's exciting, for me as we think about the different opportunities that are provided through your organization, Joyce, and how we can make sure that we're preparing people, whether they're going to college or going right into the workforce. And I've spent my entire career at Highmark. We then were a very small regional Blue Cross of Western Pennsylvania plan all those years ago. And so have been here my entire career, but it feels like a different company every few years. So very exciting.
Well, um, my favorite, that's for sure. What a great company they are. And I talked to someone, Deb, who was in like a mid-management position, and he didn't know this Highmark story with Bender. And I told him the story. You know what he said to me? Thank you for telling me that, because now I know I went to the right place.
Oh, very good to hear.
And I did not place him. You know what I mean? He just
Yes.
worked there, and that was his reaction. But Perry, I know you know, how unusual is it to see a company hiring people with disabilities from the top down?
Joyce, absolutely. I mean, Highmark, and I've said this on your show before. Highmark is such a leader across the country in the hiring of people with disabilities, and what a gift they are to Pennsylvania, and to be headquartered here and do this kind of work is really special for us here in Pennsylvania. And to have that pipeline from Bender Consulting and people with disabilities over to Highmark is just terrific news that needs to get out.
Yes,
No,
and
I
they
would
are
just,
also in New York, West Virginia,
and Delaware.
and
Delaware.
Delaware. Yes. And so you know this, several years ago, they hired someone from us in New York. They still work there. And by the way, all of you Buffalo Bills fans, I hope you notice that they are at, yes, Highmark Stadium, which I always start clapping when I hear that part, that it's Highmark Stadium. But is that right, Deb? Are those
That's
the
right.
other states you're in?
Yeah, so yes, New York, Delaware, and West Virginia for sure. And Perry, I was just going to say, I love the fact that, I believe we are a company. I often say to our good friend Charlie LaValle, Joyce, right? We talk about Highmark being a company with a soul. And I would tell you, Joyce is a hard person to say no to, as you all probably know out there. So we couldn't say no to her, but it quickly became something that we are passionate about. So we're so blessed to be part of the work that's going on at Bender Consulting.
Yeah, to people with disabilities, who knows a company where I don't have to go in and give this huge example of it's for business, it's not for charity, no pity, and I go through everything. And some companies, what I hear this all the time. Well, we have to go here and there and talk to this person and that person, but we'll get back to you. Whereas Highmark, it isn't just the people at the top. I mean, people all levels in that company, they call us. They call us and say, Joyce, that person is so awesome. Like Tracy Solidib just recently hired several product managers. And why I bring that up is they don't just bring in people at Highmark at the entry level. It's at all levels. Now, about that one person, one decision. Deb will be receiving an award this year. We just have to get the date with her, called the Dreammaker Award. And she is the one and only person that will ever receive this from the Bender Leadership Academy. And in other words, it won't be like next year it's this person and one person. So one person, one decision. I don't know if I ever told you this, Deb, but Bill Lowry told me right when he was leaving, and everyone, that's the person I was talking about. He was the CEO of Blue Cross of Western Pennsylvania and was there with the merger when it became Highmark. And Bill is the person that stood behind me to bring 6 people with disabilities on contract for 3 years. Because how else would I have any money coming in to build this company? And he told me, of all the people there, always keep in touch with Deb Rice.
I didn't know that, Joyce.
That's what he told me. Of all the people there,
Very
always keep in touch with Deb Rice. So in heaven, he must not be surprised that I went to Deb Rice and said, Deb, I have this dream. I want to start this academy for high school students with disabilities to prepare them for the world of work, to fight mental health issues that they're not getting, where they're not being helped, and fighting bullying. Now, how long do you think it took her to say, okay, let me get you the funding? I'll tell you, minutes, not even a day. I'm in her office and she said, okay, this person, take care of this with Joyce. And you know what? Now there are people that she has saved their life and doesn't even know that were suicidal, that had suicidal ideation. Because Perry, you know, the intersectionality between disability and mental health is sky high. And sadly, with high school students with disabilities, so is uh, suicide. Do you know what I mean, Perry?
Oh, absolutely, Joyce. There is such a high level of mental health needs in our schools today, and it just, they're not solving these problems. And again, to have that leadership at Highmark that recognizes that and hires people with disabilities and participates in the Bender Leadership Academy to reduce that stigma is just all the more important.
Well, we've had students say that they didn't even want to live.
Yeah.
And now everything has changed. So that, Deb, is the incredible impact you had. So we're saying how great Highmark is, but there's another great Deb story. Deb, where did you start at Highmark? What was your first job?
Yeah, so I started very entry level. I was in the prescription drug department before people really understood prescription drug was a thing, right? They thought about penicillin or whatever. Now it's, 33% of cost for any health plans. So I started there, and it was actually exciting. We were Blue Cross Western Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, a very small regional player. That was some 4 decades ago. I've started admitting that, Joyce. I didn't want to give away my age, but I've started admitting it. It's fine. And then, we became Highmark in 1996 when we merged with Blue Shield of Pennsylvania. And I was blessed to be part of so many opportunities in my career that, have enabled me to help others, right? Whether it's some of the work that we're talking about here or just helping somebody think about their career, right? Because we don't just want people to enter the workforce and be in an entry level position like I did, right? We want them to have really important and meaningful work to do and responsibilities. And so I've been blessed with the opportunity to not just myself have those kinds of advancements, but to help others. And so, it was a lot of fun. In 2010, I actually became the president of the health plan at Highmark, and that was an interesting time. There was a lot of change going on, in the industry, and frankly, a lot of change going on in my life. My husband passed not long. My late husband passed not late after that. But I, I think that I got the energy from just the opportunity to really be a part of something big at Highmark, and so it's been just one of those great places to be.
Well, I tell the story to our students. You started total entry level.
Total
And
entry.
then I say,
It was
guess
a
what she's doing now?
grade level one.
Okay. And from grade level 1 to CEO, which just shows that your job was because of key things you believed in? Like, what do you think are some of those traits for anyone at work that would help them move up? What do you think that is?
In a culture like we have at Highmark, which I do love, I think a quality that's really important to possess is the idea of being a serving leader. And you'll hear David talk about that, and you'll hear so many of the leaders in the company say that. And so, what does that mean? It means being able to listen to others. Listen to our customers, our patients, key constituents, customers in the marketplace that really are in need of our support in some way. But most importantly, and I say this all the time, it's about listening to our most valuable assets, listening to our employees. Our employees are our most valuable assets. And we've hired so many that are still with us working with you, Joyce. And so I love that. And I guess, I've always tried to be a humble and caring leader. Hopefully, some feel that way. But make no mistake about it, there are times where I have to make those difficult decisions or unpopular kinds of decisions and have direct conversations. But I think most importantly, under all, it's to have that spirit of being a serving leader. And attributes that are really important to me are integrity, first and foremost.
Mhm.
Have to have integrity. You have to be able to inspire, right? You have to be decisive. And I would say you have to be adaptable. We're all in a world of change, right? And maybe now more than ever. And being adaptable and making sure your business is being adaptable and you're helping your team members to be adaptable is really important. So those are just a few, Joyce, but I would say having that spirit of being a serving leader is really important to me.
Well, you are a servant leader, which may lead into why were you so passionate about helping these students who are bullied and just trying to find employment and dignity? Why?
Yeah, Joyce, there's a lot of reasons. I'll just share a couple. First, I think it's really crucial that we demonstrate commitment to society, to our communities, to individuals with disabilities and their loved ones. I think it's really important that we can demonstrate that commitment. Very important to me. And I think, whenever I look at Highmark's mission, which I do just love, it really is about a remarkable health experience, freeing people to be their best. That's the important part of that statement, freeing people to be their best. We have that opportunity to do that. And that's not just helping people find jobs, but it's helping the people that you talked about that are being bullied in school or need opportunity, need to understand how they should apply for jobs and be engaged in the workplace. So I think it's wonderful. So and I would say on a personal note, one of my bonus daughters has autism, and this, Joyce, struggles from time to time, has been bullied, has felt like she doesn't fit in. And it's hard. And I know you know about that. And I know you help people every day around that. And, I guess going back to the Bender Leadership Academy and, the immediate yes, I don't know. I didn't know how to say no. I think it's just such a great opportunity and a passion that I have personally and professionally. So, guess what I would say? Thank you for asking me. I appreciate that. I never said it, but thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Well, I mean, you do have a passion, and I know how you feel about young people with disabilities. And Perry, I always say too, if we don't mentor young people with disabilities, not only do we want to see them integrated into the workforce, what about disability advocacy? What about that?
Oh, it's so important I mean, I think Deb's a great example of how you can move forward in a company and business, but you also bring, Joyce, that advocacy side to the Bender Leadership Academy so people understand why advocacy matters, why it's important to be engaged outside of work and giving back to the community, just like Deb does, just like others at Highmark do, right? Just like your company does, Joyce. You got to give back to the community, and people with disabilities are part of that community. Our world is part of that community, and service is important.
Mm-hmm. And the realization that you, as one person, can make that difference. Well, as you all know, Perry has been my uh, news anchor for years, but now I have her right up here with me and because she is so good to talk to and so knowledgeable about so much we are doing, but always brings us the news. And so you all know we are the only place where you can go to hear the current news that is applicable to the lives of people with disabilities. You know, we're not on CNN, we're not on Fox News, we're not on MSNBC, but here we are right here where you can hear what's happening. So, Perry, what's in the news today?
Well, Joyce, I know we just started the new Congress, right? People were just sworn in the beginning of January. The president's gone. The president-elect's going to have his swearing-in ceremony on the 20th, his inauguration. But at the end of the last Congress, the 118th Congress, they were still busy working right up to the time that they were leaving and saying goodbye to each other. And there's a bill I'm going to talk about here because President Biden on January 4th signed House Resolution 670, which is called the Think Differently Database Act, the Think Differently Database Act, HR 670. And this bill requires the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to establish a website to provide information on resources available to individuals with disabilities, their support, and their families. All right. So here's more specifically about that. These are the details. This resource website has been assigned to the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services to establish. The website is going to include these things: information about your state's Medicaid eligibility, your
Mm,
state's point of contact, your state's covered long-term care services, and any wait lists in your state associated with Medicaid for people with disabilities. Like in Pennsylvania, we have the consolidated waiver, and there's a wait list for that. People who click on Pennsylvania would find out how big that wait list is. The other thing about this law is that CMS has to promote this website to people with disabilities. So you don't just have this and have it out there, but you actually have to promote it to people with disabilities. And the website has to be established within the next 3 years. So by January of 2028. Here's what's really exciting about this. It was bipartisan. You know, we all talk about how, Congress is so partisan and nobody gets along. Not here, not with disabilities, right? People with disabilities are in all political parties. Their family members in all political parties have kids with disabilities. So it's bipartisan legislation, and it was intended to make it easier for people with disabilities to understand Medicaid, what services are offered to them, and how to get in touch with the people that can determine their eligibility. Here are some statistics, Joyce. Medicaid provides health coverage to 80 million people across the country. 80 million people.
wow.
9.5 million of us, 9.5 million are people enrolled based on their disability. And so it's often confusing to get in touch with the right people, to understand the eligibility about Medicaid. And so this bill really tries to overcome this with one national single website. So again, this bill passed in the last days of the 118th Congress. It was passed by a voice vote in the House. the U.S. Senate by unanimous consent. Really, again, it's so hard to get unanimous consent. Here it is, no disagreement. All the senators wanted this bill, and the President Biden signed it the beginning of this month. Joyce, we just talked about advocacy. Advocacy matters because advocates wanted enhanced public access to essential information about Medicaid for people with disabilities across this country. So this is a centralized platform, and it's really because of advocacy. It's because of Advocacy Matters. So if you go to Disability Rights PA's website today, that's www.disabilityrightspa.org. You can click on today's Advocacy Matter segment. It's about halfway down our homepage. You click on today's segment, and I give you a link to where you can find HR 670. It's a 2-page bill. It's really short. You can read it yourself and find out all about HR 670.
Wow, that is great.
Isn't it?
Also what's great is that it was bipartisan.
Bipartisan.
I mean, that is wonderful. I want to tell you, if you're in that situation, I just want you to know Highmark Whole Care works in this area, and they too hire people with disabilities from Bender Consulting Services. Am I right, Deb?
That's right. That's right.
And go check it out at Highmark. But now we know this leader is totally educated about all of this and can get forefront involved. That is great. That's great news. Thank you for that, Perry. So as I told you, all of you, Bill Lowry enabled me to start Bender Consulting and told me to always stay close to you. How amazing it is, everything that you have done. But I want to ask you a question about Highmark. It's unusual for any company that every CEO has stood behind this. Like when Bill took me to lunch, when he was leaving, Bill Lowry took me to lunch with Keith Kabmeyer
Yeah.
and him. And we were with John Browse and Jim Klingensmith. And he told them, look, there are a few programs and partnerships I want to keep going, and this is one of them. And ever since then, it has gone through with everyone. And, you're the CEO of Diversified Business, but you've been there from the beginning, always supporting us. But that's unusual. What often happens, and I've seen this throughout corporate America, is let's say someone is behind diabetes, maybe someone in their family, and they were all engaged. Everyone in the company was engaged. And then when that person left, that was pretty much it still was there, but not with that force and power. And yet that has never happened. And you were saying, about the company, what Highmark's like. What do you think causes that, Deb? I mean, at Highmark, why do you think that has happened?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is certainly, sort of that company with the soul kind of spirit. But what I would say, Joyce, is it's worked, right? It's worked. We have, I employee after employee, seeing them in our lobbies that we have hired from vendor consultant. It's been a success story, right? I personally don't know of any that have not been successful, and there probably have been. There always are in life, right? But it's been successful. It has allowed us, I always say, you hire somebody with a disability, you will get one of the most loyal, high performers you can hire. I believe that. It's core. And we've experienced it, frankly. And so why wouldn't you keep doing something that's working? And so I think that's why, some of it because of our passion for kids and seeing them being able to develop into, really high performing adults in their life. Giving them that opportunity is really important, but it's been so successful for us. And I know Mick Malik has been on your show a bunch of times. He's such a supporter and he's hired so many of your team members, which has been great, right? And so we're going to keep doing it because it's working.
Well, you know, it's working also because of the people at Highmark. I mean, it goes both ways, you know? And I told this uh, last show that there was this young man that I've known for a very long time. He used to work for WellPoint, and then WellPoint had a big layoff and became Anthem. And then he went to one IT consulting firm and another IT consulting firm, but it got to the place he could not find employment. And he interviewed in Tracy's area because he had incredible experience, and they all loved him. Wow, look at his background. And so they told him, they being Highmark, listen, we're going to call you around, I think it was 3 o'clock, to talk to you about something. Well, he didn't know if that was going to be more references, what it was going to be. Well, they didn't call him at 3 o'clock. They called him at 1 o'clock, and he was already out and about because he didn't think they were calling to 3. And when they called him at 1 o'clock, it was to tell him that they were hiring him and extend the offer. And when he called our office, he said, and I looked up at the sign that said food bank and thought, I won't be coming back. Oh,
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, yeah, I know. Like everyone in our office was like, oh, you know what I mean? To have someone say that to you, now I don't have to come back. That's where he was. He was in the parking lot of the food bank.
Oh,
Um, and, you know, I could give example after example. You're right. I've had people there over 20 years. And you know what? I tell people, no, it's not that people with disabilities are superheroes. It's they were left out. And I don't care what group you are, female, African American, if no one will ever hire you, then you get that chance, gratitude is going to come full force. Do you know what I mean, Perry?
Joyce, absolutely. Uh, we have many people with disabilities who work in our office at Disability Rights Pennsylvania. And I think if you just, give people a job, stay out of their way, they're going to do a great job for you. And like Deb had said earlier, right, servant leadership. Listen to people, take what they have to say, and make changes based on what they say in the company, like we do. And we have great personnel policies as a result of that. And people will show up every day to work and do incredible things. Absolutely incredible things.
Well, Deb, I am going to change the subject
mhm.
and talk about a very hot topic, which is healthcare is changing at the speed of light. Um, for example, telehealth. I remember after the pandemic that you had this thing you could go from your house, your home, onto the computer and see your doctor, and who knew what would happen from that. So do you see that continuing to expand in all areas, Deb?
Yeah, I really do, Joyce. I mean, the pandemic was really the entry point in a meaningful way. Telehealth has been around for a long time, but not in a meaningful way. But it had to be during the pandemic, right? People couldn't get out and see their physicians or get the health care that they needed. Um, and I think it's going to continue. If you think about AI and Gen AI, it's going to make it all possible to be even easier I think in the future. And it's a great alternative. We have a lot of in the markets we have members, there are some that are very rural and there is not an opportunity, right, to travel to see a physician. Joyce, you've talked about in the past, somebody with a disability may not have transportation, right? And so telehealth is an option for some. And so I think it's going to continue. I think, with the new AI capabilities, it will only expand. And, I think it's a great option. And if you think about, um, people who are my daughter's age, they would rather do a telehealth visit, right? They
Mhm.
don't want to travel into the office. And so it's a good option. So I see it continuing.
Yeah, an example of what you're talking about. So let's say you are, oh my goodness, I have epilepsy, as you all know, and I'll, I'm not feeling right, or I'm having a reaction to this medication, to the anti-seizure medication, whatever it is, and you don't drive.
Yeah.
Because as you all know, many people with epilepsy do not drive. I actually could drive, and I have my driver's license, which is always a big joke here at the office. Hey, it's good you have that driver's license. But um, my doctor, my epileptologist said, when I said, is there a chance that something could happen, that I'd have a car accident? Because all I could think of was, wouldn't it be horrible to injure someone else? And he said, well, yeah, yeah, I mean, there's always that chance. I said, okay, so I don't drive. Just knowing that that could happen. Um, but there are people that, unlike me, they couldn't drive no matter what because they're still having seizures. So the state took their driver's license. Well, what a mess you would be in. Now with telehealth, you could tell your doctor what's happening. I mean, that is really great for people with disabilities. Or if you have quadriplegia and you have a personal attendant, this makes it so much easier. And this AI reminds me in a way of the internet. There's so much good. Thank God we have the internet, right? But there's also bad with the internet. And there is going to be good and bad here when it comes to employment or employment loss. But overall, I believe it's going to do more good than bad because AI could even get into predicting your health needs. If you could have diabetes or whatever. Am I right, Deb?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, there's so much that you can do through telehealth, and AI would just, maybe accelerate or augment that. The other place telehealth played a really important role during the pandemic, and I think it's continuing, is around mental health, right? Some of the probably the two key areas that I saw telehealth increase during COVID was primary care. I'm not feeling well, whatever. Maybe I have COVID, maybe I don't, and mental health. And I think the benefit there is somebody who has, a stigma to going into seeing a therapist, or seeking care around, some mental health issue that they're having. This makes it easier, right? I can do it in the privacy of my home. Joyce, we just partnered with a company called Spring Health. I think David may have shared this with you, where it's increased the access points. So there's much more mental health access points in our partnership with Spring Health. As you know, it takes forever to get an appointment. Our members have complained about it, and we've had a lot of really good outcomes from it. Everything from the digital capabilities they provide, care navigation they provide, deeper clinical care can be through telehealth or in person, and medication management. You mentioned medication; that's also critical. And so we've seen telehealth and some of these partners that we have now playing an even better role, a bigger role in the healthcare space. So it's evolving. You started off with this part of the discussion around healthcare is changing. It's changing dramatically.
Yeah, and Perry, there are mental health issues where people won't even leave their home. But there's also the big problem, I can't get to health. I can't get to someone to talk about my mental health. And if you call somewhere and it's going to take forever, that just may be too late. What do you think about that?
Oh, I completely agree with what Deb said and how it has enhanced mental health services for all people, including people with disabilities. Like, it's not just about the transportation issues that people with disabilities can face and trying to get somewhere, but yeah, I will tell you, I see my therapist remotely through telehealth, and my therapist uh, has less cancellations on her schedule than anyone who still sees people in person. Less cancellations.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah, that makes sense.
it is so much easier for people to meet them where they are instead of having them to come in face to face.
Yeah. I see there's an example right there.
Yeah.
Well, Deb, when I think about you and the servant leadership and just everything about you and how much your employees always tell me how they love working with you, I was just with, Joy
Yes. I love
when
Joy.
we were at the Heinz History Center,
Yes.
and all she was telling me is raving about you to
Oh,
me.
she's a sweetie.
Yeah, and Joy Matoni is just, she's awesome. She is. She is just an awesome person. But with you in your life, who is your role model? Like who has impacted you?
Yeah, whenever I think about role models, I have more than one, but probably the one, that sticks out for me in the kind of conversation that we're having here today, believe it or not, is Fred Rogers right here from Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
And the reason I say Fred Rogers had the opportunity to meet, he's been such a big part of activity and great things that we've done at Highmark. I think he's, behind some of this company with a soul kind of attitude. But he has dedicated his life to making the world a kinder and more inclusive place. And so the reason I say why sharing that role model here today with this conversation, making this place more inclusive is so important. And I think we all can agree, not only is he a legend, he's a serving leader, a great example of
Hmm.
one.
Oh, he is. And what is that Charlie LaValle would say? Some like anyone who helps a child is a hero to me. Yeah, I don't
Yes,
remember
it's
it
something like
exactly.
that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
but Mr. Rogers did love children. And we're so proud we can say, Perry, that he's right here from Pittsburgh. And we
Absolutely.
actually had the first PBS station right here in Pittsburgh. And if you're in Pittsburgh and you go to WQED, you can even see the studio, that he was in, and some of the uh, props they used on the movie with Tom Hanks. But he's just, he's just awesome. He was awesome. Well, that doesn't surprise me, Deb. So, Deb, since you've been at Highmark, what do you believe are uh, different accomplishments you're the proudest of?
Yeah, I- I've thought about that in the past, Joyce, as I'm getting closer to the retirement age than beginning a career. You think about it from time to time, and maybe three things come to mind. First, it is being part of the fabric of a great company and helping to shape the company to what it is today. We've evolved and transformed so much. And, it wasn't just one thing, it was many things. It was a real journey, right? And so it's not easy to stay that course necessarily. And I'm proud of that. And I think being viewed as a leader who cares and tries to elevate others and becoming the best they can be in their jobs, in their lives, period, is just really important to me. And probably the third, with the most business relevance, is really around when Highmark acquired West Penn Allegheny that was struggling mightily and would be closed at this point here in this region, and building AHN. Um, that for me, that professional accomplishment and being part of that work was so important. And it was so important because, I had just gone through the loss of my husband, who had a cancer journey. And, I know a lot of people in the business. I know doctors that could help, right? And it was so complicated and hard to navigate and not just sad and hard, but really hard work to make sure he got what he needed. And I felt like if we create this, we create an AHN that's different. And you said it at the beginning of your show. We care about people. We care. We treat people with disabilities like people. We do that with every patient. We can be better, and we can make it better for people who struggled and went through what I and Alyssa went through in our life as we lost him. That's one of the things I'm probably most proud of. One of the hardest things that we did, and my role in that was hard as well, but one of the most important, and I'm proud about it.
Well, you should be. I mean, I remember, Deb, when Blue Cross of Western Pennsylvania was on that. Which street was that? They were on,
Smithfield.
yeah,
Smithfield.
Smithfield Street. And
Yeah.
when you drive past, I'd look at the building, it's small, not that large. And then when I think today, Fifth Avenue Place, Penn Avenue Place, Highmark Stadium. I mean, look how much this company has grown. And one of the reasons is because of you. And I mean, Deb is like a powerhouse. She's known everywhere for her leadership. And isn't it something she believes in servant leadership? But because that is more needed. That is what makes all the difference. It really is. That's what makes the difference. Um, well, I wanted to just say about AHN, what I was getting to is when they were West Penn, yeah, they would be gone.
Yes, they would be gone.
They would be gone. And now, Highmark, you own how many hospitals now?
There are, well, we have a lot of care facilities, including all of those 14.
Wow, 14. Well, I can say that every time I've been to that Wexford Health Pavilion,
Oh, it's
I
wonderful.
have had great service. Oh, I love it there.
Yes.
I love any place you can go and get everything done,
Yes.
taken care of at one time. So, Perry, do you have anything you want to say before we end the show?
Just thank you. Hi, Mark. You're my Medicare Advantage plan. So
You're far too young for Medicare Advantage, Perry.
not at all.
So, Deb, do you have any message you would like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, Joyce, thank you for asking. Whenever I think about, the role, Joyce, that you've played in their lives, and I think about the opportunities that lie in front of them, first of all, I would say don't let anybody define you. You define you,
Mhm.
right? Do not let
Mhm.
somebody else define you. I would
Mhm.
say also step outside your comfort zone. That might take some courage, but step outside. My biggest opportunities came from stepping outside my comfort zone, and I think that's really important. And then I would say, embrace the power that you possess. Right? You all possess power. Dream big, dream bold. Don't let anybody hold you back because you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for everyone. And we thank you.
Well, I mean, what great advice for everyone. And for all of you young people with disabilities listening to this show, I hope you remember what she said about not letting something else define you. I always say, I'm living with epilepsy and I'm not ashamed I'm living with epilepsy. And regardless what your disability is, you too should never be ashamed. Well, with that, we're getting to the end of the show now. And we end every show with a quote. And today, that quote is, the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He is the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. Said John Maxwell, one of my favorites. And in the words of Mary Brocker, when you go out today, remember, choose joy.